Welcome. Today, we will delve into the depths of history to uncover the truth about the legendary Cleopatra, a woman whose name is forever associated with beauty, cunning, and power. But what lies behind the romanticized images and myths rooted in culture? Are you aware that the modern perception of the Queen of Alexandria often differs significantly from the reality of her appearance and character? Over the years, the myth of her exceptional beauty has been reinforced through films and legends, while historians describe her as a woman with masculine features, prominent eyes, and a round nose, far from the typical image of an Egyptian queen. Why is the ideal of beauty so strongly upheld if Cleopatra herself was primarily known for her charisma and intelligence? And what truly played a key role in her power? Her looks, or her wit, diplomacy, and strategic alliances? Could the myth of her appearance conceal the real reasons for her influence? And is her entire fate a result of a full-scale game for the throne, involving not only political skill, but also ruthless intrigue? In this investigation, we will break illusions apart, stitching together parts of historical truth into a shocking picture that will forever change your perception of the legend. Are you ready to see what's hidden in the shadows of myths and archival secrets? Then, let us begin. Deep within the layers of world history, among thousands of years of eras and fallen civilizations, Cleopatra's name continues to resonate as a synonym for mysterious beauty and incomparable charm. This iconic image has been cemented in popular culture through films where she was portrayed by Sophia Loren and Elizabeth Taylor. These are not merely cinematic cliches. They are cultural myths ingrained in the consciousness of millions, like a foundation upon which the image of the Egyptian queen is built. The prominent name evokes associations with flawless beauty, and in the imagination, her face embodies grace and imperfection. But what is hidden behind this ideal of the perfect woman? What facts, authentic descriptions, or research can shatter illusions and reveal the truth about the person who has captivated our imagination for centuries? The common perception of Cleopatra as an excessively beautiful woman is no accident. The image imposed by cinema epics and literature created a figure where beauty became synonymous with power. After all, who is not familiar with famous portraits depicting her with a graceful face, smooth hair, and refined movements? In photographs taken during the United Expedition for the Restoration of Ancient Monuments, or in collections of European galleries, she appears as a living embodiment of feminine beauty. So, what is the real reason behind this myth? The truth is that these images and descriptions are nothing more than cultural symbols imposed by eras, prejudices, and artistic canons. At their core, they are based on the ideals of Greek aesthetics, which prioritized harmony of lines and proportions rather than objective beauty. When examining more objective sources, we encounter different information. In the works of Plutarch, the ancient Greek historian and philosopher, there are testimonies that sharply contradict popular myths. He describes Cleopatra not as an elegant model, but rather as a woman with features that might today seem masculine. His words evoke the image of a person with strong facial features, prominent eyes, a somewhat round nose, broad facial traits, awkward movements, which clearly do not fit the image of a delicate beauty. Can this be dismissed as mere speculation? Not at all. His accounts are not the only ones. Modern research, historical reconstructions, and analysis of written sources confirm that Cleopatra's figure was much more complex and multifaceted than the simple image of the elite created by centuries of one-sided perceptions. We should consider the hereditary features of the Ptolemaic dynasty, to which Cleopatra belonged. This Greek elite, ruling Egypt after the weakening of the pharaohs, was characterized by particular physical traits passed down through generations. Among them was a tendency toward corpulence, excess weight, resulting from genetic traits and lifestyle. This selection over centuries toughens not only character, but also appearance. Therefore, when speaking of the mesmerizing beauty of the Egyptian queen, it is less about natural exceptionalism and more about a set of features averaged within the ethnic and dynastic lineage. The Mediterranean type, to put it mildly, does not align with the image of Asian or Slavic beauty, implying that the ideal was shaped by different standards. In images, monuments, and portraits created after her death, Cleopatra appears more as a charismatic, intelligent woman, endowed with unparalleled charm and the ability to seduce, rather than as a wondrous goddess of beauty. Her main strength was her ability to speak, listen, show compassion, astonish, and hold power, what was called charisma and wittiness. It was these qualities that made her irresistible, even without external beauty, which, as analysis of historical sources shows, was often merely an appendage to her inner world. She was fluent in several languages, possibly including Old Persian, Latin, and other ancient dialects. Not just a woman adorning a court, but a person with a keen mind that surpassed many of her contemporaries. This was where her true power lay, not in her facial features or body proportions, but in her intelligence, captivating wit, and diplomatic skills. The accounts left by ancient historians are not illusions of beauty, but evidence of her personal strength. Sometimes male traits were also mentioned as present in her image. Although subtle, these features confirm that the beauty ideal of that time was far from uniform standards. In an era when a delicate figure, a slender nose, and large eyes were considered the epitome of decorum, her face and figure might have seemed somewhat rugged. But was it really so important to conform to these canons? Historians are convinced that her intelligence, charisma, and diplomatic talent were more crucial than any physical attributes. And within this lies the reason why Cleopatra was able to retain power for so long and win the hearts not only of her contemporaries, but also of future generations. The myth of her exceptional beauty is nothing more than a cultural stereotype imposed by the proliferation of images and literary representations. The question arises, why does modern perception of this woman so strongly bewitch us with romanticized beauty? Why do millions, hearing her name, involuntarily picture an elegant, fragile woman, radiating grace, as if she stepped out of an artist's masterpiece and came to life on the screen? This phenomenon is no coincidence. It is explained by a powerful cultural myth rooted in consciousness through centuries, a myth in which beauty becomes synonymous with power, charisma, and destiny. But should we trust these romanticized images? And what if behind her radiant face lies not an ideal of exterior perfection, but a completely different story? The story of a woman whose intellect, talent, and ability to manipulate circumstances surpassed any measures of outer attractiveness. Perhaps it is this very mystery that makes her figure so compelling, and the myth of her beauty a hidden symbol of her deep inner world. And maybe this is the key to understanding her true power, in her ability to unite hearts and minds, not in conforming to illusions of flawless beauty. The rise and fall of the mighty Egyptian queen is not only a story of power and treachery, it is a dramatic saga revealing the incredible complexity of human nature, intricate dynastic intrigues, and ruthless games for the throne. At the center of this story is a woman who managed to embody the roles of ruler, diplomat, and strategist. Her face, simultaneously, the face of countless secrets, bloody decisions, and ruthless internal politics. Looking back, it's impossible not to wonder, what mechanisms, what tactics and strategies did this woman hide behind her elegant smile to stay at the top of a powerful state surrounded by enemies, both inside and outside? The answer to this question is the key to understanding not only the struggle for power, but also the very nature of human strength, desire, and survival. Cleopatra, Queen of Egypt, appears before us, not just as a figure with a crown and scepter, but as a complex tapestry of family ties, political strategies, and personal ambitions. The family life of this ruler was a real battleground, where titles and reasons for marriages were not always rooted in love. The duty to strengthen the dynasty and maintain power dictated not only political decisions, but also personal lives. Internal family connections, which today seem endlessly complicated and even perverse, were tools for achieving objectives. Marriages with two brothers, Ptolemy III and the later Ptolemy XIV, at first glance appear as standard practice of ancient dynasties, but they became more than just unions of two individuals. They were cunning political moves deliberately designed to secure power and eliminate rivals. A closer look reveals that these ties held a deeper meaning. They are like two rapiers, securing the mast of the empire, allowing the queen to balance between two leaders, while simultaneously governing the country and reserving the right to manipulate. But marriages alone are not the most crucial weapon in her arsenal. Cleopatra knew that power is not only about family foundations, but also about delicate diplomatic games. For many years, she skillfully used love, fear, promises, and blackmail to maintain control. Her mastery lay in her ability to speak the language, knowing how to communicate in foreign and in one's own, a diplomatic language of compromise, threats, and hope. The facts show she actively employed her cunning to strengthen her position, solidify her internal power, and resist external conquerors, especially the Romans. It is the regional and interstate battles that define the nuances of her existence. Conflicts with Roman powers grew more intense and ruthless. While bloody civil wars raged in Rome, bloody battles for the throne ignited within Egypt. Blockades, military clashes, and political intrigue. All of these turned her rule into a constant high-stakes game. Was she willing to take any measures to preserve her autonomy? Did she employ tactics of dividing her enemies, blackmail, or betrayal? All these methods became her weapons in the struggle for power. Evidence from her correspondence with Roman generals and diplomats shows she skillfully interacted with the strongest states of her time, leaving behind not only a throne, but also the ability to make strategic maneuvers. But much lies hidden behind her ability to speak, persuade, and negotiate. The art of diplomacy was her strongest weapon. Surrounded by hostile forces and family intrigues, she used not only the weapon of words, but also her knowledge of languages, understanding of other cultures, and subtle psychological tactics. She could make decisions the very moment when few of her rivals even contemplated resistance. Every action she took was the result of analysis and calculation. Every step was preparation for the next move. Her arsenal included many measures, from the birth of an heir and political alliances to harsh repressions and subjugation of enemies. Within these decisions lay an entire philosophy of power, where emotion and rationality intertwined in a brutal struggle. Centuries later, one might ask, if Egypt's independence could have been preserved without bloody intrigue and alliances with Rome? Possibly yes, but at what cost? What sacrifices, what tragedies? These were all part of a game where the victor could also become a victim and an executioner. In an era when the Roman Empire was constantly expanding and political alliances and betrayals became the norm, Cleopatra fought for her state as best she could, with intelligence, cunning, and determination. The harshness of her decisions and diplomatic tricks testify that she knew. Power is not only strength, but also the art of playing the long game. This story is not only about her personal fate. This is a lesson about how difficult it is to maintain independence in a world full of betrayals, intrigue, and power struggles. Could Egypt have remained free if not for bloody agreements and secret negotiations? Possibly not. Because in times when each stronghold of power seemed vulnerable and enemies lurked in the shadows, the only way to hold on was to use all available means, seize every opportunity, and cross the boundaries of what was permissible. And that is exactly what she did. Resilient, clever, ruthless, she understood that there was no place for weakness in the game for power. Only the smartest and most persistent would survive. Today, centuries later, We can only guess. Could she have kept Egypt independent if she had not made those bloody deals and marriage alliances that forever changed its fate? Time, political realities, human nature, all of these are intertwined, creating the impossible complexity that is the essence of power, its cost, and its tragedy. Deep within the millennia-old secrets of the ancient world, it is only truly known that the destinies of great rulers are often determined not only by strategic calculations, but also by the relentless force of feelings, which flare up at the intersection of personal desires and political games. This was also the case with Cleopatra VII, the last queen of Egypt, whose name is recorded in the annals of history under the sign of intrigue, treachery, and passions capable of altering the course of an entire civilization. Her alliance with one of the most powerful men of Rome, Gaius Julius Caesar, became not just a diplomatic move, but a true avalanche capable of dismantling the foundations of an ancient empire and redefining the balance of power in the Mediterranean. But was it merely a strategic alliance? Or did an unbeatable passion, personal feelings, lie behind the quest for power and political declarations? Feelings that, despite all dangers, broke through official facades and merged into a single, intertwined whole? Within this question lies the key to understanding the grand historical tragedy that unfolded on the stage of two great civilizations. The first scene of this drama takes place in a distant and tense year when a crisis erupts on the political arena of the Eastern Mediterranean, threatening to escalate into war. A year when Egypt, a small but strategically vital principality, was on the brink of catastrophe. During those centuries, when the Roman Republic was already restless and power was shifting in a cold dance of ambitions and betrayals, news arrived of the disaster of Pompey, the great general and political leader of Rome, afar from his homeland. This crisis, in fact, was only an external facade. The true drama was played out in the continuous intrigues and divisions that engulfed the Roman elite. At this critical moment, diplomatic letters and statements dispatched from Alexandria became signals that set the course of unfolding events. And it is no coincidence that it was precisely then that a woman, a symbol of ancient authority, a representative of one of the richest and most powerful dynasties of Egypt, entered the scene. In her correspondence with Roman leaders, Cleopatra expresses her determination to preserve Egypt's independence by relying on an alliance with Caesar at a time when his name had already become synonymous with power and invincibility. Each of her messages was imbued not only with diplomatic tact, but also with a quiet hope for possible support and, perhaps, for something more. It was against the backdrop of this diplomatic dialogue that the story of personal mutual feelings begins to unfold. When Caesar, the crowned leader of Rome, arrives in Alexandria, his meeting with Cleopatra becomes not just an official event, it is a prelude to a passionate and dangerous alliance. In a city where the whispering winds fueled intrigue and conspiracy, their encounter takes place in a secluded mansion, a quiet place where every shadow held the potential for danger. Greek columns and luxurious carpets, everything was prepared for this moment. Caesar's gaze, cold and determined, meets the fiery eyes of the Egyptian ruler. A fire capable of igniting passion or consuming everything in its path. Evidence suggests that in this initial confrontation, not only political advisors were present, but also feelings that, although remaining in the shadows of official protocol, penetrated the very fabric of their meeting. Time seemed to freeze, and each of their looks became a challenge to fate. Who among them was more powerful? Who would deceive? Who would prevail? The next act saw the birth of their son, Caesarion, which carried symbolic significance. For centuries, such a birth was a guarantee of cementing the alliance, a confirmation of its intimate and political strength. In this story, filled with calculations and passions, this new life became a bridge between worlds. The political game gained a personal undertone. Now there was not only an alliance of two leaders, but also a family, a tool of political pressure and personal feelings simultaneously. Official records testify that neither the queen nor Caesar limited themselves to diplomacy alone. The boundaries between personal and state dissolved. He was her protector, she was his queen, whose will and mastery of the heights of power intertwined with their desire to preserve it all at any cost. This complex expression of their relationship, a mixture of personal passion and state strategy, remained a mystery. Caesar, traveling the world in pursuit of blood, power, and fame, could not help but feel an attraction to this woman, both a strategist and a woman possessing strength, capable of managing not only the state, but also feelings. But what secret lay behind this union? Were his motives purely pragmatic, aimed at strengthening his position in Egypt? Or was there a storm of personal emotion that ignited his heart, capable of changing everything? He supported her as needed in her struggle against internal opposition, offered her the chance to retain the throne, but behind all this were he and her feelings. Or was it merely a political game? Evidence, historian analyses, and archaeological finds show that these relations were entirely intertwined with personal and state interests. To Caesar, Cleopatra was perhaps not only an ally, but also a woman capable of inspiring and unsettling at the same time. When, in a year difficult and burdensome for Rome, the decisive blow finally struck, Caesar's assassination, the picture took on tragic overtones. Young, full of hope and fears, the Queen of Egypt was forced to endure a shock that disrupted her view of the future. Her authority, once supported by her alliance with a powerful man, was now under threat, and her entire destiny seemed like a shifting sail in a stormy sea of upheavals and betrayals. In these moments, thoughts about politics and love intertwined into an inseparable tangle. Were these relationships merely political tools to strengthen her power? Or did strong feelings inspire their union, capable of fundamentally altering the course of history? This question remains one of the most mysterious and brutal, yet also the most touching moments in ancient history, even nearly 2 millennia later. At this point arises the central question: to what extent did personal feelings influence this woman's politics? Perhaps it was love for Caesar that became both her blessing and curse. Why could such a powerful and defiant figure as Cleopatra trust one man so deeply? And why, even after his death, did she continue to fight, stubbornly striving to preserve the legacy of their union? These questions forever lie beyond simple understanding, and perhaps it is precisely these questions that make Cleopatra's story so extraordinary. When the personal and political, passion and calculation, faith and betrayal merged into a single fateful symphony. So, why could her alliance with one of the most influential men of the ancient world have forever predetermined her destiny? Why did this union, founded on passion and power, become the key to her tragic end and the symbol of an entire era? Attention to these questions is the core of understanding not only Cleopatra herself, but also the entire epoch that has long vanished from the face of the earth. In these relationships, contradictions, ambitions, love, and betrayal, lies not only the story of a woman and a man, but also the fabric of her time, its hopes and sorrows. And only by understanding this can we grasp why the fate of the last Egyptian queens became one of the most vivid reflections of human passions and political symbolism. Under the shadow of the immense events that shook the ancient world after Julius Caesar's murder, a new, swift, and mysterious spectacle unfolded, in which the rich, enigmatic, and ambitious Egypt played the main role. This era was a time of political turbulence, unrest, and new alliances, when the fates of empires intertwined with the destinies of human dreams and passions. At the center of it all was Cleopatra's figure, the last of the heirs of a great dynasty, who once again found herself at the crest of the historical wave. Her return to power, against the backdrop of bloody events in Rome, is not simply a struggle for the throne, but a complex intertwining of strategies, calculations, and emotions, in which personal and political realms merged in a continuous flow of decisions and betrayals. After the tragic demise of Caesar, as the ancient world struggled to recover from the shock, a new reality settled in Egypt. 80 years of Ptolemaic rule marked an era of fierce internal conflicts, constant court intrigues, and ruthless political maneuvering, where even the smallest detail could become decisive. Cleopatra, fleeing chaos, reclaims the throne while maintaining her loyalty to the memory of Julius Caesar, a political figure, a support, and a symbol of a new era. Her support for Caesar's heir, the young Octavian, the future Emperor Augustus, serves not only as a personal attachment, a thread connecting her to Rome's future, but also as a tool to secure her influence in Egypt. The period during which this took place was an era of dismantling old orders and laying down new ones. Egypt, like an island of stability amid the raging sea of Roman upheavals, once again became a crucial center of power and intrigue. Historical evidence shows that this revived political activity was not a coincidence, but a complex blend of pragmatism and sentiment. Returning to the local courtly elite, the coins engraved with her image demonstrate her determination. She had no intention of relinquishing her position. At just 33 years old, while most women in her situation sought solitude by the pool or in secluded gardens, Cleopatra was already engaged in strategic negotiations, diplomatic intrigues, and seeking new allies. But the most fateful alliance for her was with Mark Antony, a man who was simultaneously her companion, closest advisor, and potential weapon in the battle for power. Forming a relationship with Mark Antony in 41 BCE was not merely a romance or a friendly attachment. It was a challenge, a gamble with destiny, and simultaneously a calculated move, infused with cold strategy. Both sides sought advantage. For Antony, strengthening his eastern position in the face of a perilous Roman political landscape. For Cleopatra, securing her own authority and preserving Egypt's independence. In the dark halls of palaces, amid the rustle of bright fabrics and the shimmer of gold, their secret dance of human passions and political maneuvering began. Their bond was a mixture of romantic feelings and political game, woven so tightly that it was now impossible to distinguish one from the other. Moreover, they began to unite their resources, strengthening diplomatic and military ties that would allow them to resist enemies who, greedily and relentlessly, advanced from Rome. Over the following years, filled with tense negotiations and diplomatic agreements, the situation grew more and more strained. At times, it seemed that all Egyptian and Roman politics was nothing more than hypocrisy, a facade hiding a struggle for power, fear, or even passion. Their alliances took on features not only of political necessity, but also of personal devotion, which intertwined so tightly that they were difficult to separate. On palace walls and in letters, every word visible, every figure, a hidden mosaic in which power played the leading role. Within this world, filled with intrigues, negotiations take place, alliances are formed, battles and betrayals occur. In the 20s BCE, during a time when it seemed nothing could stop their victory, Cleopatra and Mark Antony became inseparable comrades, united by blood and bloodshed. Evidence indicates that during these years, their union bred not only political cunning, but also new heirs. In 48, 47, and 46 BCE, when the coronation of these children, son and mother, became a strategic goal, this alliance took on new shades. Their three sons, Antioids, began to be surrounded by listeners and enemies in their world, symbolizing international ambitions. This fruit of their union became a powerful diplomatic argument, gaining international influence, strengthening positions through inheritance. New connections were created, knots of power tightened, and Egypt, for the first time in its history, became a full participant in world politics, no longer a peripheral country. But simultaneously, internal conflicts were an unending tolling of the stones of fate. Disputes raged within the palaces, rejection of Roman hegemony, fear of remaining under their pressure. All of this destabilized emotions, spilled blood, and fueled enmity. The external world grew increasingly dangerous. Rome, once seeming distant, transformed over these years into the #1 enemy. Its ambitions, strength, and riches all came under scrutiny for those seeking to preserve their sovereignty. Amid this chaos and constant movement, the question arose: what motivated Cleopatra? Was her attachment to Mark Antony personal, or was this relationship part of a cunning game aimed at saving Egypt, preserving herself, and securing her place in history? Analysis suggests that true motivation was not only emotion but rather a tool, a weapon, a strategic move embedded in the intricate web of that era. Skillfully playing on feelings and fears, Cleopatra used personal relationships to strengthen her position and fight external threats. Logic and emotion intertwined so closely that it was often difficult to tell where love ended and calculation began. Her alliance with Mark Antony was a powerful instrument, a combination of personal passion and political necessity that could either consolidate her power or destroy everything in a moment. And so, the main question is, what was the real reason behind her active support of Mark Antony? Were her feelings sincere, or did they serve only strategic goals? Perhaps inside her soul, the same fire that burned brightly in the heart of every political chess player was ignited. Or was it merely an illusion, a beautiful mask, hiding an unprecedented struggle for power? One thing is clear: her actions were driven by a much more complex web of reasons than simple personal feelings. In their world, a realm of figures and passions, love and politics were inseparable. All of this unfolded against the backdrop of significant historical events, when empires fought for their survival and individuals sought to leave a mark, to ensure their name would be remembered through the ages. Can a single alliance change history, alter the fate of entire nations and empires? Could a bond that seemed, at the time, to be an act of passion and political cunning simultaneously serve as the starting point either for downfall or salvation? In the end, this story is not just a vivid chapter of ancient chronicles. It is a mirror reflecting the eternal struggle of man against time, ambitions and emotions, strength of character and fragile fate. The era in which this destiny unfolded was a time of upheaval, an age when even the most innocent-looking passion could become fatal, and a single bond could change not only the lives of two people, but also rewrite the entire map of the world. In the darkness of a winter night, when Egypt, exhausted and battered in its fight for survival, remained a silent witness to the escalating crisis, one of the most mysterious and fateful deaths in ancient history took place. In 30 BC, after Mark Antony's defeat, and when his remnants were torn apart by Roman legions and power in Egypt fell completely under the control of new conquerors, that date entered history as the final breath of the giant mechanisms of an empire crumbling under the weight of its contradictions. At that moment, when the last sparks of hope for one of the greatest rulers, Cleopatra, rose from the depths of a political crisis, something happened that is still shrouded in mystery. The circumstances of her death are like a complex puzzle, into which not all pieces fit perfectly. The widely accepted version states, cunning Roman treachery combined with the legendary venomous snake, the asp, which, according to rumors, was sent by servants. This idea, like a relic of antiquity, has taken root in the collective consciousness. Rome's authority, victorious in the bloody struggle for control, clearly had a direct interest in eliminating the last ruler of the Ptolemaic dynasty. This version seems logical. As frightened and lonely in their fall, the Egyptians have long inclined to believe in a sinister conspiracy, in which even the lost heart of their land could die at the hands of faithful maids. But researchers, unwilling to rely solely on traditional legends, seek new evidence, and they find it. In 23 AD, German scholars proposed a hypothesis. Cleopatra's death might not have been solely caused by snake venom, but something else could have been waiting for her. A compound applied directly to her skin or concealed in a cream, deadly yet seemingly harmless. This theory, based on new technological analyses, challenges the traditional understanding. The poison or agent causing rapid and inevitable illness could have been crafted so subtly that even the queen herself might have used it as a final weapon. Biochemists studying ancient remains suggest that her death could have resulted from internal poisoning, an act concealed even from the victim herself. This opens a new chapter in understanding the demise of great leaders, not only as an act of passive suicide, but as a carefully planned, precisely executed murder. However, the question of her burial site remains shrouded in mystery, like a lake covered by a layer of darkness. Evidence and archaeological excavations indicate that Cleopatra's tomb has yet to be discovered. For centuries, researchers have searched for her lost resting place. Some believe her remains lie hidden in underground tombs, concealed from view. Others think her body was carried away by the flow of time, dissolved into history without a trace. The evidence is irrefutable. The search for her grave has become one of the greatest archaeological mysteries of the modern age, a topic discussed, debated, and dreamed about by countless generations. Who knows? Perhaps someday, beneath the shadows of ancient ruins or beneath layers of centuries, the secret revealing her fate will be uncovered, one that will change our understanding of the end of this great queen. Modern culture also fuels intrigue, filling legends and fantasies. In them, Cleopatra is depicted not only as a woman of beauty and wisdom, but also as a symbol of resistance. Her very death perceived as an act intertwined with protest against the approaching Roman dictatorship, as the final drop into an abyss of despair. These legends contain an elusive thread of patriotism, suggesting that even at the moment of her death, she reflected her independence and strength of spirit. Thus, her self-elimination is not merely a tragic ending, but a symbolic struggle for freedom, independence, and the right to determine her own fate. No matter how the theories are intertwined, one thing remains clear. Cleopatra's death became an integral part of the symbol of the fall of Egypt as an independent state. This moment, like a tiny seed sown in the vault of history, was later shattered by the harsh reality of events. A once powerful and independent land came under the control of foreign conquerors. Her era, with all its passions and intrigues, ended with the tragic death of the last ruler of the dynasty, who became a figurative herald of the final collapse of ancient Egyptian civilization. Her death is not just a personal tragedy. It symbolizes the end of an era when mighty empires crumble, leaving behind only myths and legends. Turning to her legacy. Today, the image of Cleopatra appears before the eyes of modern society, a woman who became an icon of beauty and the epitome of womanhood, a strategist, a politician, and a woman who used all her talents to maintain power. The myth of her beauty and royal wisdom is so strong that people often forget. In reality, she was a woman skilled in manipulation, commerce, alliances, and betrayals. Her name has become synonymous with a cunning woman ruler whose image today adorns books, films, and legends. But is everything in this legend true? Or perhaps, behind the shimmering surface, there is something more. A strong personality, fighting for her place in the sun, knowing that her fate was long since sealed? The central question intertwined with this drama is, what was the real cause of her death? Myth or reality? Or maybe both versions are illusions, with one being a distortion of time. How deeply can one mystery influence our perception of history? Undoubtedly, Cleopatra's death is not merely the end of a life. It is a key to understanding an entire period, an era, and even the subsequent fate of a whole region. For some, it is a tragedy. For others, an act of resistance, a symbol branded through the centuries as an agony for law and freedom. And so, when we ask ourselves what lay behind her death, what is hidden behind shadows and legends, we begin to realize her death's mystery is not only a tangled historical knot, it is also a mirror of human nature, a test for understanding one's own perception of power and freedom. Can the secrets surrounding her end reveal to us the true value of power? Or on the contrary, show its illusionary and dangerous nature? In every answer, there is an invisible stamp of a great and tragic lesson that continues to resonate in our ears even today.